Whoops. I'll tell you, this is fact too. How do I know? Because I actually got it, this sort of information, like I've told you before. Straight from the horse's mouth. People who were there. Not made up. Not from fairy tale books. People who were there. People out. Who can you trust more than your grandfather? Nobody. I've heard these stories before.
When the people that are first...
This one's for real. Yes, I know it's Douglas McGregor. Yes, I know he gets paid to be a talking head. Now and then they, I don't know if Douglas McGregor does it on purpose or not, but quite often he'll slip out actual real shit.
First in line for free house.
Oh. Just so you know, this might hurt some people who have a misconstrued belief that America is for democracy and Australia is for democracy, and yeah, let's just learn how they saved communism, shall we? And bankrupted the Commonwealth at the same time.
Seeking free health care and free money to a large extent are not even citizens of the United States. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. This government continues to do what its predecessors did, which is steal from us. They steal our time, they steal our standard of living, and they steal our purchasing power. I don't know what we can do except get the word out and try to get people to understand that, you know, these plantations that we talked about, you know, the digital plantation where we're the product. They harvest our attention, our data, you know, our private lives. They tune algorithms to direct our thinking, to push our buttons emotionally, you know, while we work for free building their empire. And then you have the debt plantation run by Wall Street. Student debt before you can buy a beer.
Well, it seems like there's a interesting pull from leftoids, the woke crowd, which are trying to rear their ugly head again by recruiting.
Back off, you kid.
Housing debt for 30 years, credit card debt for groceries. You know, a man in debt is a man who's afraid and he won't speak up. And I think that's what they're betting on. And then finally you have the tax plantation. You work half the year for the government. What do you get? You don't even get good health care in many cases. You don't really have safe streets, not a border. One of my roommates at West Point took his daughter.
Just on what he just said. You know it is dangerous. A man who has nothing to take and wants for nothing. I'm comfortable with very little. Quite happy. I don't need creature comforts and shiny objects. Been there, done that. It's overrated.
To New York City, where she was going to enter a school up there, and he said he was just appalled at everything he saw. The people on the street. He wanted to take his daughter home, and she insisted, "No, let me try this." Well, she spent a semester there and came back. It's not safe for her. This is beyond belief. This is not the America that I was born into. It's not the America I want my children or grandchildren to live in. $38 trillion and escape the consequences. Eventually, the bill is coming due, and people don't seem to understand that a third of all the dollars ever created in the history of the United States were printed from nothing over the last 22 months. So this bill is coming due, and the wars overseas in the Middle East, Eastern Europe, or Venezuela won't rescue the economy. They'll just tank it even faster. So how do we get this across to people? That's all I know. I mean, we've got to stop this effort to extract wealth from the people that are productive and transfer it to the people that are connected. And that was the other point. People don't understand how our economy has been financialized, and that the billionaires that are currently calling the shots in this country, and certainly, shaping the environment for policy making on the Hill or in the White House. These people have become billionaires with transaction fees. These people aren't creating anything. They're not producing anything. We're not talking about Henry Ford or John D. Rockefeller. I mean, however much we may or may not have liked them, they created things, they built things, and they created employment, and they enriched others. It didn't all end up in their bank account and the bank accounts of people that worked for them. When we went off that gold standard, which was supposed to be a temporary fix, naturally, we created an opportunity for politicians they should never be allowed to have, and that is to simply print money we didn't have, to print and create fictitious wealth that we did not have. Now, what did that mean? Well, it meant that when it came to fighting wars, we didn't have to raise taxes. All we had to do was print more money. And the reason we went off the gold standard, as we know, is that we were broke at the end of the Vietnam War. LBJ had sent us deeply into debt. Nobody wanted to default. Nobody wanted to face the music. And that's really the other part of it. All these people in Washington, and Dr. Paul knows this, they're fugitives from accountability. They don't want to be held responsible for anything. Look at this vote that Thomas Massie just led in the House. And they voted it down. This was an opportunity to impose constitutional restraint on the President of the United States and his desire to march into Venezuela. Nobody voted, well, I shouldn't say nobody, some people voted for it, but it didn't pass the House. Why not? Well, it's another example of, I don't want to be held accountable. I don't want to be viewed by my constituents as disloyal, unpatriotic, and oh, by the way, my donors won't pay me what they're paying me now if I don't go along with this. I don't see any good ending to this. This supposedly new national security strategy is a joke. The actions make a mockery of the whole thing. There's no evidence that anyone intends to change anything. And that includes, obviously, Donald Trump. Hypocrisy is rampant when vice pays tribute to virtue. And we see the selective use of the Constitution when it suits members of Congress, that is the Senate, the House, as well as the President. But otherwise, they've opted to ignore it. This has been going on, though, as you know, for a very long time. I was trying to talk to somebody about Lend-Lease, and they asked me, well, what was Lend-Lease, which tells you where we are in our history. And I said that FDR, without consulting Congress or receiving permission of any kind, simply sent Harry Hopkins to Moscow in July of 1941, right after the German invasion of the Soviet Union, to essentially promise Stalin anything he wanted for nothing. And effectively, that's what we did. We shipped over vast quantities of materiel and equipment and locomotives and tanks, you name it, aircraft. All of this was done free of charge, whereas at the same time, we were bankrupting Great Britain and the Empire, because we said anything we send to you, you have to pay for it in gold. So we succeeded in bankrupting the British Empire and saving communism. That's a hell of an outcome for a war, especially since the British were really supposed to be allied with us. People don't get it. They don't understand it.
I thought this portable AC from 2 Aussie engineers was another scam. 3 months later, I haven't touched my split system once. It's called Breathe.
And they don't understand that the Constitution, as old as it is, and as imperfect as it may be in many ways, is still the best device to protect us from the kind of abuse and lying and deceit that we're subject to right now. The British say, oh no, that really didn't destroy us. No, actually it did. Because they were spending 14 times the gross domestic product to fight it. And they went broke at the end of it. You know, I remember reading a comment from Churchill back to Lloyd George in 1920 about Iraq. They thought that they had discovered this oil gold mine in Iraq. And he finally said, look, we need to get out of Iraq. This place is terrible. It's not just a question of dealing with unhappy Turks and remnants of the Ottoman Empire. We're spending more in Iraq right now than we spend on the national health budget in Great Britain. Well, that was the British Empire. The British never had to enter World War I, didn't have to fight it. And then everybody says, well, you didn't have any choice with World War II. Well, you always had a choice as to how to handle those things. And the British, they fought Napoleon for almost 20 years. And frankly speaking, they had periods of time where they essentially enjoyed a brief armistice. And then
Just quickly on that on Iraq, you tinfoil hatters that go on about apparently they found a Stargate in Iraq. You know what the Stargate is? It's not intergalactic technology. Yeah, it is a Stargate for transfer of data. Now, what happens when you have the technology to upload yourself as a program as data? Then you can go anywhere you want like that. Not in your physical self, your data. There is a 9-level deep data centre being built under the ballroom of the White House. It's been proven, there's the receipts to prove it. The same contractors are building this data centre as who built the one in Jerusalem, which is where? Say it with me now. Israel. Oh. Welcome to the Roman United States of Israel. The Roman Empire of the United States of Israel.
Then when they were more healthy financially and the situation was favorable, they came back, and ultimately it took time, but they defeated Napoleon. Nobody thought in those terms at the...
Or, in a more biblical term, the Tower of Babel 2.0.
time. And so they bankrupted themselves, they destroyed the empire. And then we walked in, we inherited the whole thing, and we are making precisely the same mistakes that they made. Whenever I speak, I always have people in the audience. There's always a college student or graduate who says, what should I read? You know, you said a lot of interesting things. What do you think I should read? I say 2 books. Number 1, read Paul Kennedy's The Rise and Fall of the Great Powers. Absolutely read it. And focus on that chapter on Great Britain because that's the closest analog to ourselves. The other thing is read Stalin's War and understand how shamelessly we were manipulated during and after World War II.
Useless
Those
idiots.
2 things together can explain brilliantly why we are in the position we are now.
Stalin's War, where the term useful idiots came from. Know your history, people.
But, you know, most people look at that and say, well, you know, Doug, that's a very long book. The first thing that I became involved with in last year was developing a new organization, a new nonprofit called the National Conversation. We had our first major meeting in Dallas on the 4th of October. The idea behind the National Conversation was, well, we need to build momentum for a third way, for potentially a movement away from the uniparty towards a new political structure, potentially a new party. And people said, well, Doug, you know, this has never worked in the past. I said, no, that's true, but it has worked on occasion. And I reminded them that until John Brown decided to stage his raid on Harper's Ferry, the Republican Party had a snowball's chance in hell of getting elected to dog catcher. So I said, you don't know what will happen in the future, but I think we've reached a point of no return now in our history. People are beginning to figure out that it doesn't make a great deal of difference what you do at the ballot box. You get the same bad outcome. But it's not enough to say that. You've got to go around the country and talk to people and listen to what they have to say. And one of the things that we want to do, we started in Dallas, but we want to do it across the country. We'd like to do it about once every 90 days or 120 days, but preferably 90, is go to another location. It could be Salt Lake City in Utah. It could be Cleveland, Ohio. It could be anywhere you want to go, Charlotte, North Carolina. We want to come and hold essentially convene a conference, invite hundreds of people there, Americans. We're trying to make it as inexpensive as possible. We're going to have some speakers, but then we want to hear what the person sitting in the audience thinks. So we're saying that the speakers are not just there to lecture. They'll say something for 10 minutes, and then we want to give people the opportunity to interact with the speakers because we want to find out what Americans really think. Now, I can sit here, and anybody can, and say, well, I think I know. But I've learned over the years that you really got to ask people for their opinions and ask them what they think and ask them, what do you want to happen? Because when they begin to say, this is what we want to happen, that's when they begin to really look for people who will deliver it. And they're increasingly persuaded that the people that are supposed to deliver are not going to do it. This a few weeks ago. For some reason, people are only now beginning to find it. Maybe that's because the Google algorithms are suppressing it, and X has found ways to suppress it. I don't know, but a lot of people seem to think this was designed to be a response to President Trump's recent comments when he came on ostensibly to tell us about Venezuela and then essentially lectured us on what a great success all of his policies have been. It wasn't really designed to be that way, but we were on the right path, I think. We called it the Great Betrayal.
This robotic puppy is so lifelike, it actually fooled my neighbour, who's a veterinarian. I've been a grandmother for 15 years, and this is...
And we were trying to get people to understand just how much damage we've done to ourselves. We thought that we would try to cast it in a new light. And so we included some comments in there that we hoped people would appreciate, because it's hard to understand why a house that cost $11,000 or substantially less than that, along with a lifestyle and a standard of living in 1970, was really quite good. And today, the same income of $11,000 costs $50,000. And you wonder, well, how did this happen? And, well, I guess it's okay. We've kept up with inflation. We've kept up with the debasement in our currency. We were trying to get the point across to people that that just isn't true, that the middle class has been largely destroyed. And that's not entirely Donald Trump's fault, as we all know. But we were trying to get the point across that he's the latest in a series of people, all of whom have behaved in very much the same manner, regardless of whether they were Democrats or Republicans, and hoped that by illustrating this and demonstrating it, that people would come around to understanding that they're not going to get anywhere by going to the ballot box and picking one of two, both of whom end up doing the same thing anyway. Well, we were also trying to demonstrate how this problem with immigration, particularly illegal immigration, obviously, has been weaponized against Americans, because they don't seem to grasp, that you're talking about hiring 3 aliens or illegal aliens, even legal immigrants, for the price of 1 American. So how does this help American citizens? How do we ensure that Americans earn a living wage? How do we ensure they have a standard of living which is commensurate with the needs of the nation? Well, we don't. We're ignoring it completely. And then, of course, on top of this, you have this nonsense overseas, this constant warfare that drains the treasury, along with a lot of other things, does nothing for the country, certainly doesn't do anything for our national security. If anything, it makes it worse. How do you get this across to people? And that's what we were trying to do in the video. And as you point out, it has gotten a good reception, but it seems as though a lot of people are only now finding it. It's been out there for a little bit. So hopefully more people will see it.
Well, there you go, eh?
Bratán.
Notice how he made reference to Waterloo. What was Waterloo? The Battle of Waterloo. What was the big scam there? Napoleon was set up by the Rothschilds and Rockefellers for a massive wealth transfer. David D. Rothschild, I believe, was it? Or Evelyn? I think it was David D. Rothschild. One of the Rothschild, I'm sure, one of the Rothschild. Now, of course, they funded both sides of the war. And what did they happen towards the end of the Battle of Waterloo? When Napoleon finally lost, they spread a rumour around England. And by the way, Napoleon almost won that war. They were all set up. He almost won that war with his tunnel under the English Channel. You almost made it into England underground. How many people know about the tunnel under the English Channel? It was dug by Napoleon. It was almost there. Now, they spread a rumour in England that Napoleon had won before the word could actually get out who had actually won. The battle wasn't quite over. But England thought it was. Napoleon's won. And they all thought the worst. Everyone in England that had any money, any shares, any stocks, any businesses, bank holdings, bonds, all that stuff. Everything, the entire market of the English economy, just, it dunked. Boof. And he went round and bought everything up for pennies on the dollar. Tuppences on the... What are we looking at over there then? Halfpennies on the tuppence or something. They probably would have said. Tuppences on the pound. Now... Oh geez, what do they have? Shillings, tuppences, halfpennies, pennies, dollars and pounds. Threepences. Not many of you would have heard of that currency, would you? The old currency before the metric system. Now, he went round and bought up all the stocks and businesses and bonds, shares, but fuck all. And then when word got back that England actually didn't lose, everyone had sold everything for peanuts, ended up broke, and he ended up with the lot. And thus was the start of the central banking system. Before Jackle Island or anything. Jackle Island. That was before they sunk the Olympic with the Titanic sign on it. It's another story for another time, boys and girls. I'll tell you this much though. The ship that's sitting on the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea is the Titanic.